In San Francisco, it had been a hot, muggy day, and George Fields was exhausted, agitated, and impatient to go home. As soon as he got on the bus, he sighed and slid down onto an open seat up front. The bus gradually grew full during the course of the following 3 stops, and standing space only was required. George praised himself for being fortunate enough to get a seat and stretched out. Then, a hugely pregnant woman boarded at the following station. The woman moved forward as the bus departed from the stop. George pretended he hadn't noticed her while gazing out the window. He had no intention of rising. We will find out the entire story together, but first make sure to subscribe and to follow our channel for more stories. As she struggled to cling on, the woman hesitantly walked over to George. In a few days, she was going to become a mother indeed. Several of the people who were listening and George got pretty angry. From the back of the bus, a young adolescent who had been listening to the entire talk decided to turn the tables on George and give him a lesson. He began gently advancing to the front while holding out his hands as if he were blind. He moved cautiously past the expectant mother and turned to the driver. The child thanked the driver and clung to the strap while standing close to the expectant mother, clearly finding it difficult to maintain his balance. While watching, George's conscience pricked him. The youngster was blind, and that was something he had no control over. George erupted. "Hey, blind boy, feel free to have a seat." Uncomfortably, the boy shifted into George's seat. He grinned and said, "Thank you. That was extremely thoughtful of you." He then reached up and removed his thick glasses, revealing dark sparkling eyes that were full of mischief. But he was aware of someone who was more in need of the seat. Afterwards, the boy got up and graciously invited the expectant mother to sit on George's prized chair. George was indignant. How dare he deceive him, this little rascal? George was a huge, young, powerful, and chiseled man. He would let the pipsqueak know with whom he was toying. George stood in front of the youngster as he reached out to strike him in an effort to teach him a hard lesson. The driver slowed down and asked George if he wanted to get off right there as the other passengers started speaking up and protecting the youngster. George clutched onto the strap and stopped talking. He was conscious of the boy's broad grin the entire way home, as well as the curious onlookers who were silently taking pleasure in his discomfort. What can we take away from this narrative? First of all, take the proper action. George would not have been embarrassed by having a youngster portray him as a slob with no manners if he had chosen the appropriate course of action. Second of all, be considerate of those who are more defenseless. The pregnant woman needed the seat more than George did, yet he was content and made up justifications for his lack of need. And third of all, arrogance is always met with karma. The boy's cunning ultimately forced the conceited and obstinate George to act honorably, making him appear foolish in front of the other passengers.